Seems like everybody's on this side of the house this morning, so I'm going to try to direct it to this way. If you see me getting a little off track or see me a little fumbling over my words this morning, it's harder to look this way than it is to have my books here and kind of look around. So I'm just going to try to direct more to this side of the church this morning for that very reason. Now, last week we looked at Joshua 7, if you were here, and we were reminded that there are times in our faith journey that victory meets defeat. And this was something that the Israelites experienced, and it is something that we as Christians experience even today. And what caused the Israelites to experience defeat at Ai was their overconfidence in their own abilities and their disobedience. First, the Israelites were overconfident that they would overtake Ai. So they sent fewer men into the battle, and they lost. Secondly, Achan had kept for himself some of the plunder from Jericho that God had instructed to be destroyed. And it was these two factors that led to their once victory turning into defeat. The amazing thing about experiencing defeat is that we have an opportunity to evaluate why we are experiencing such a defeat. And that was when what the Israelites did. They evaluated why, after experiencing such a victory at Jericho, that they were defeated in Ai. Not only did they learn why they had experienced this defeat, but they corrected the cause for the defeat. They realized that the cure rested in God, and they understood that victory only happened when they were obedient to God's instruction. Their defeat was not to throw them on their backs, but it was to bring them to their knees. See, after the Israelites had experienced their defeat, they regrouped, they purified themselves and relied on God, and it was now time for them to make up for lost ground that they had experienced at Ai. You see, if there's anything that the Israelites, and yes, the world today, need to understand about God, is that He is a God of second chances. And this was a quality of God that the Israelites should have already known, but as we can see, it is something they needed to be reminded of time and time again. And we might add that we need to be reminded of it in our own lives, time and time again, that God is a God of second chances, third chances, fourth chances, and the list goes on. God is a God of love. He's a God of compassion, and He loves us so much, and He wants none of us to perish. He wants us to inherit eternal life, and He's a God of second chances this morning. But making up for lost ground is always difficult, and that applies to almost everything in life. It applies to my favorite hockey team, the Montreal Canadiens, who will not make up for lost ground, unfortunately. They've fallen behind in the standings. And it applies to the student who procrastinates too long. It applies to the couple who spends too much money. Catching up is hard to do. And this application was true for the Israelites, and it's true for us Christians today. There's a popular saying that I'm sure we've all heard and perhaps even used for ourselves. Our children and our grandchildren, and it goes like this: if at first you don't succeed, try again. And this saying should have been attributed to the Israelites. They had experienced many defeats in their day. However, the one thing that can be said about them is that they were a group that got up, they brushed themselves off, and tried again. Even today, we as Christians seek to live for God and depend on His power and strength. But there are times that we do fail. And when we fail, it is time for us to try again. Here in Joshua 8, there are 4 principles that we can learn from Joshua and the Israelites about regaining the victory after we experience defeat. We should always follow God's plan. We should rejoice in God's provision. We should always give thanks. And we need to renew our commitment to God. The first principle that we need to look at this morning is follow God's plan. Joshua 8 and 1 tells us that Joshua 8 and 1 tells us, Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack Ai. For I have delivered into your hands the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land." Oftentimes, after we experience defeat, there is an element of fear that overtakes us. And oftentimes, it paralyzes us from facing the thing that we fear in the first place. We learned that the Israelites had sinned, and that sin led to defeat and fear. The people were hesitant to continue their attempt to capture the promised land. Their failure led to their lack of confidence, and God gave them his plan, which hinged on their willingness to live by faith and not by fear. You see, sin can bring about fear and loss of confidence in our lives too. Only in confession can we claim the renewed power of God in our lives. We can only imagine the disheartening effect of the failure at Ai. These people who had lived in the victory of Jericho now dwelled in the defeat at Ai. However, God reminded his people that his plan would bring the victory. Amen? It's his plan that brings the victory. He instructed them to take the entire army to Ai. Everyone was involved. No one was to be left out. They sent the ambush and prepared to fake a retreat so that the people of Ai would be convinced that once again, they're running scared. The cowards, they're running. They're getting away from us. Isn't it just like God to take us back to the place where we had last did business with him in order to restore our confidence? Indeed, the men of Ai fell from the ruse, and they pursued the fleeting army of Israel. Once hidden, Israel's soldiers entered and torched the city that was empty. It was destroyed completely, and the men of Ai were defeated. We must remember that no matter our defeats, we can experience victory only as we depend on the plan of God in our lives. I'm going to read that again. No matter our defeats, it doesn't matter what we're going through, it doesn't matter what we've experienced in our life, we can experience victory only as we depend on the plan of God in our lives. God has a plan for all of us. None of us are exempt. He has a plan for us. The second principle that we need to look at this morning is to rejoice in God's provision. If we look at Joshua 8, we will see a difference in God's instruction regarding the livestock and the plunder of Ai as we do regarding the plunder of Jericho, recorded in Joshua 6:18, where they were instructed to what? Keep away from the devoted things, so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. Otherwise, you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble. And they've learned from that. Achan did it. Achan took some of the plunder. He saw it. He liked it. He took it. And it cost him dearly. It cost him his life. It cost the Israelites 36 of their own men. It cost him the defeat of Ai. But it cost him personally, his family, and all of his belongings as well. In Joshua 8:2, God tells Joshua, "You shall do to Ai and its king as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you may carry off their plunder and livestock for yourselves." Here we see that God is giving provision to the Israelites. Now you might ask, why the difference regarding the plunder of each city? Well, according to the Life Application Study Bible, we are told that there are two situations that were covered by Israelite law for handling spoils or plunders of war. According to the first situation, cities like Jericho, which were under God's ban for judgment for idolatry, worshiping of idols, they could not be looted. God's people were to be kept holy and separate from every influence of idolatry. Now, the second situation stated that the distribution of captured goods from cities not under the ban, so those who were not an idolatry country or city, was normal part of warfare. It provided the army and the nation with the necessary food, flocks, and weapons needed to sustain itself in wartime. Ai was not under the ban, and the conquering army needed the food and equipment because soldiers were not paid. The plunder was part of their incentive and reward for going to war. I would say this one today, that if we had to be like that in our own lives, in our own country, where soldiers were not paid, where people were not paid to defend our country, I don't know if we'd have that same willingness as the Israelites and God's people to go into countries and defend and to have to fight and go to war. But God provides for all of us. Doesn't matter. God provides for our soldiers. God provides for our country. God provides for our nations today, just as He did when the Israelites were in battle. You see, as with God's willingness to give second chances, to which the Israelites have been the recipients of, so too have the Israelites experienced firsthand God's awesome provision for them. The Israelites spent 40 years wandering in the desert before they embarked upon this journey to enter the promised land. And during this time, God provided for them. Deuteronomy 29:5-6, the Lord says, "During the 40 years that I led you through the wilderness, your clothes did not wear, nor did the sandals on your feet. You ate no bread and drank no wine or other fermented drink. I did this so that you might know that I am the Lord your God." See, God provides. He gives us what we need. It's not always what we want, but God gives us what we need to sustain us. If there was anything that God wanted this group to know, it was that He loved them. And that as long as they were obedient, they would know His provision. It wasn't because of God that they were defeated the first time at Ai. No, it was because of their own disobedience that they experienced defeat. You see, God's desire that they would only experience victory, and they would have it if they had been obedient to God's instructions. In this chapter, we see that yesterday's defeat becomes today's victory. Once sin has been dealt with, forgiveness and victory lie ahead. With God's direction, we need not to stay discouraged and burdened with guilt. No matter how difficult the setback sin may bring, we must renew our efforts to carry out God's will. Like a parent provides for their children so that they can succeed, so too God provides for our needs so that we can experience victory. The third principle that we see in this text this morning is to remember to give thanks to God. Joshua 8:30 and 31 tells us that Joshua built on Mount Ebal an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded the Israelites. He built it according to what is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of uncut stones on which no iron tool had been used. On it they offered to the Lord burnt offerings and sacrificed fellowship offerings. Excuse me. Joshua led the people of God in worship. They built an altar according to Moses' specifications and offered sacrifices as a sign of their thankfulness to God for His victory. The altar was to be built from uncut stones on which no iron tool had been used. This was to ensure that the altar would be holy. This was to prevent people from worshiping the altar like idols, or worshiping the craftsmanship of the workers rather than the great works of God. It's easy, even tempting, to start celebrating after victory and to forget who is ultimately responsible. Oftentimes, even in our own lives, we give credit for the victory to the wrong people. We will thank everyone around us for the support and their encouragement, but we fail to give God the credit for His strength, forgiveness, and most importantly, for His love. See, Joshua wanted to ensure that the Israelites did not forget why they had experienced this victory. He wanted them to know that victory came through God and not themselves. Left to themselves, they would have experienced the same defeat they had the first time at Ai. It was only through the power of God and His provision that they were victorious at Ai this time. I love it that God doesn't waste our failures and defeats. Don't you love that? We sometimes brush them off. We sometimes say, I don't know why I went through that. I don't know why I had to go there. I don't know why I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing in my life. You see, God uses them. He uses the struggles. He uses the defeats that we experience in our life for our ultimate good. God has a way of bringing good out of evil as long as we commit our ways to Him. We need to always to give God thanks in every situation of life. God is in control. His desire is that we will follow where He leads. Are we doing that this morning? Are we following where He leads? Are we doing as He desires that we would do? And the fourth thing that I want us to look at this morning, the fourth principle that we learn from this text, is to renew your commitment. Joshua remembered during the celebration and sacrifices to give attention to God's word. He wrote on stones the law of Moses, verse 32 tells us, and then read to all the people. The behavior of Joshua and Israel was a symbol of the renewed commitment to God. I believe that it was very important for Joshua to remind the Israelites that they needed to be in tune with God and recommit themselves to God if they wanted to experience His continued blessings on their journey to the Promised Land. Not only was it an important lesson for the Israelites, but it was an important lesson for us too. Oftentimes we fail to experience all that God has in store for us because we are so consumed with our own wants and our own desires. Like the Israelites, we are consumed by our own abilities that we fail to consult God on where and what He desires for us. You see, some will read this chapter and see the regained ground as that which was taken at Ai. But the real regained ground was the renewed commitment of God's people to Him. Just like water, our tendency is to flow only downhill spiritually. We need to be reminded constantly in times of challenge and in times of victory that our real strength and our real source is God. Commitment to Him and worship and His Word restores ground previously lost because of sin. May our prayer be that of the psalmist this morning, found in Psalm 51, 10 and 12. Create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a steadfast spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence or take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation. And grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. This morning, what do we need to do? Are there any of these principles that we need to look at this morning in our own lives? Do we need to give praise to God for something that the defeats that we've experienced that now are victories? Let's not look at the regained ground. Look at past failures and live in our past failures. Satan wants us to do that. Satan wants us to live in the past. Now, Satan also sometimes don't want us to look at the past because you learn from your past. But Satan sometimes will bring you down because of where you've been, what you've done. He'll play it. He'll beat on it. But God doesn't want us to do that. God wants us to rely on His Holy Spirit this morning. God wants us to look at what we've done, where we've been. Say that these are lessons I've learned. I can see the challenges of life. I've seen the challenges in my own life. So I look over the last 41 years, and I see times that I've experienced those trials, those tribulations, and I've questioned God in my own life as a young Christian, saying, God, why am I experiencing this today? Why? You just keep on trudging, keep on going on, keep pushing forward. Like near to you, there's a time in your life where you're beyond the mountain. You've got to say, turn around. Look over the valley. You see the footprints? Notice there's only one set of footprints. Oh, my child. It's there. It's in those moments of time that I carried you. Learn from it today. And you go on until you face the next struggle, you face the next challenge, you go through the next valley. yes, those questions still come. You say, oh God, why am I experiencing this today? I'm not strong enough today to do this, God. But he gives you the strength that you need for each day. Each day. Oh, my child, take today. I'll give you strength for today. Don't worry about tomorrow. I'll give you strength for today. And you get through it. You give God thanks for what he's done, where he's brought you through. And I can honestly tell you that I would not be the Christian, I would not be the man, I would not be the father, I would not be the husband I am today if I hadn't experienced those trials, those valley experiences, and if I hadn't relied on God to get me through. And even today I experience the valleys. And I have to be reminded again that yes, God carries me through. Just because I'm a minister doesn't mean I don't experience the valleys, folks. Satan's very prominent. Satan would love no more than to see the minister, God's servants, God's ministers, God's children fall in defeat. But I'm going to tell you something this morning. I have somebody who's victorious. And I may fail, and I may fall, and I might make mistakes along the way. But God is my source of strength. He's my refuge. And he sustains me, and he grants me what I need from day to day. And I hope that that's your experience this morning. I hope you've experienced that in your own life. That God provides for you what you need when you need